So, moving swiftly on to our next session. I've never heard them called this before, and maybe everybody else knew, but GLP-1 medications, which are Ozempic, Wegovy, the diet jabs that are much talked about and much used. They're rapidly transforming how millions of consumers manage their health, lifestyle, and nutrition. They're having a profound impact on consumer behavior and are meaningfully impacting numerous business verticals and categories. Our next keynote, the GLP revolution, what happens when $1 billion appetite shifts, will look at the scale of the disruption and the shifts in consumer behaviors. To lead this fascinating keynote, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Brian Robinson, Global Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Growth at our wonderful stage sponsor, Havas Health Network. Can I please ask for a massive round of applause, both for Brian and for Havas, without whom I presume none of us would be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Emily. Maybe you could stay around and keep that going, keep the vibe going. All right. So very happy to be here today. As Emily said, I'm the Global CSO at Havas Health. My relationship with GLP-1s is actually quite interesting because it actually goes back over 15 years. So GLP-1s first launched into the market in diabetes, right? And I was working on the first GLP-1 to be launched as a therapeutic intervention for diabetes. Now, over a year ago at Havas, we made the business decision to launch a GLP-1 consultancy, which sounds so bizarre to launch an advisory offering focused on one therapeutic class. Never, to my knowledge, it's never been done. So why did we do this? We saw the early signs of disruption. We saw all the foundational elements that a therapeutic class had already been solidified by the healthcare industry and now was going to propel change in a whole new different way. So let's have that conversation today. And I think it's really interesting if you got to see the Fever Tree presentation before that I'm following a beverage and a mixer thing because GLPs and the mixers are getting to know each other right now. So right now in the US, approximately 1 in 8 people are either on a GLP-1 or have taken a GLP-1. And that figure, is going to grow significantly, right? Right now, this figure is about 12% of the US population. That figure is estimated to go between 20 and 30% of the US population over the next 5 years. Very, very significant growth. Now, what's propelling that growth is the global obesity epidemic, which we all know is a very big problem. It's one that the US plays a very big role in. We're not happy about it, but we're playing a big role in the global obesity problem, but it is truly a global problem. In fact, the UK has the most significant obesity problem in Europe, in the European area. Other markets like India, China also have very significant obesity problems. But this problem we look at is something that is growing in significant size and scale from both a health concern as well as an economic concern. Now, from a numbers perspective, we surpassed 1 billion back in 2022 of people in the world living with obesity. That figure is going to breach that mark. Over 50% of the world's population will be obese by 2035, right? That's within our lifetime. That is going to change. Now, the economic cost was estimated to be around under $2 trillion back in 2020 to go to the figure around 18 trillion by 2060. That is an absolutely massive cost. And as we know, obesity is the driver, the underlying driver of many health conditions. Now, to really appreciate what we're talking about, if you've not seen the effect of a GLP-1, on the left of these 3 images are people before they went on GLP-1 therapy. And I think you'd agree, you could pass any of these people on the street and not think differently about them. I mean, these are the people you see all the time. They're not grossly obese, they're carrying extra weight, but you see the transformation that they go through. Now, GLP-1s offer, depending on your body mass, depending on which product you're on, you're gonna lose between 15% and 25% of your body weight, which is absolutely significant. Now, Body weight loss is one thing. It's also the speed at which you're losing the weight. Unlike most diets we've been through, it's very gradual, it's slow. GLP-1s, you're seeing a noticeable decline in your weight in weeks. You're seeing, in some cases, people reaching their target weight in months. So this isn't years, and that is creating a very significant reward in the process. This is definitely not a fad. A fad, by definition, comes and goes, right? And 95% of the time, diets don't work. And if you're in that 5% that it does work, keeping that weight off is a really big challenge, right? You're motivated, maybe you've had some life scare, but keeping that weight off is a problem. What this also isn't is for the celebrities in the 1%. We've all seen the celebrities out there, and you can see them who've lost the weight. Oprah's been talked a lot about GLP-1s. Now, don't get me wrong, they're amplifying the message in a very big way. They're very big influencers. But the rate of people using the GLP-1s constantly is penetrating the middle of the country. So in the US, it's not just New York and Los Angeles. It's middle America is now using it. And as the health benefits are better understood, more people are going to continue to be using these. But what this is ultimately about is culture. Right now, GLP-1s are the most talked about health and wellness topic in social media. As we know, obesity plays a very big role in culture, in fashion, in fitness, in everything. And GLP-1s have automatically achieved something no pharmaceutical product ever has before. They have been embedded into the cultural zeitgeist. And this is right now what is also propelling their growth. And in the UK, let's take a look at some of the data, because we are obviously in the UK right now. Approximately 12,000 UK households have a GLP-1 user. That figure has doubled in the last year. And you're seeing some of the knock-on effect in terms of their consumption habits, their purchase and consumption habits. And when we started off doing our GLP-1 work, we had an opening hypothesis, and that was people's consumption habits will track in a linear progression, right? They're going to first start with the side effects of GLP-1s, nausea, constipation, gastric reflux, that acidity feeling. That will be the first change. People start buying over-the-counter remedies to deal with that. Then it'll come and change in clothing in other areas. But what we've actually seen is these effects across categories are happening all at once, from fashion to fitness, to travel, to social status. They're impacting every single category almost in real time. Now here's a statistic on the grocery area, approximately 6% reduction in grocery spending. You've probably been reading some of the news. Most recently, the world's biggest fast food company noted the decline in their sales, GLP-1s being a primary driver of that decline in sales. And here's some headlines from the Journal, from the New York Times, and stock performance. Now, these correlate to the GLP-1 uptake. Now, GLP-1s are not the only driver of downturn. There's other factors. Gen Zs have a different buying behavior. That's a big fact. I mentioned the beverages, talking about before. Beverage sales are down at a similar rate as grocery shopping. But overall, companies are concerned. And here are two very different examples about how companies' postures have changed in reaction to the GLP-1 threat. On the left is Walmart, and their CEO has been very outspoken that GLP-1s represent a threat to their business, right? Walmart is that archetype of the big box value store. On the left is Nestle. Nestle was an early mover with Vital Pursuit. They said, we see an opportunity here. We can introduce a frozen prepared meal, smaller portion sizes, cleaner profile, high fiber, high protein. They're leaning into this in a big way. And food consumption, like beverage consumption, isn't binary in terms of they're going from bad behaviors to good behaviors. It's something that's frankly ever evolving. We're better understanding it today. Some people move to a healthy place. Some move to a place that, you know what? I'm going to just make do with Doritos. I love Doritos. It'll give me the caloric impact I need. It's probably not a great idea, but people are making it their own experience. Now, what we are seeing is fundamentally smaller portion sizes and shared experiences. Now, let me talk a little bit about shared experiences. People don't always want to share their GLP-1 experience. They want to be able to go out to a meal because it's a social event. We all know this. They don't want to be called out. They don't want to be saying, you're only eating like a third of your meal. What's going on? So people with GLP-1 therapy are actually leaning towards pizza, Asian meals, tapas, things that are shared experiences. And Pizza Hut and Domino's, two very large pizza chains, are noting a sales uptake that correlates to GLP-1 use. Pizza represents a shared experience. Now on the fitness side, what we're seeing is an increase of 6.8 billion. That's 20% of an increase in addressable audience to the fitness chain. Now I've spoken to a lot of large fitness companies. Initially, they were terrified, thinking GLP-1s were going to impact their business. People are going to cancel their memberships. They were not going to sign on new members. In fact, the opposite. People are now feeling comfortable to think about going into a gym and having a gym experience never before. And this one's a great example. My first time doing this exercise. We all know that gyms are intimidating. How do gyms create a new experience? Another area is travel. 1.3 billion increase in travel. Not just travel, adventure travel. Walks, camping, hiking adventures. What we're looking at here is a woman who says, I can get on an airplane and not need a seatbelt extender. If you don't know what a seatbelt extender is, if the one doesn't fit you, they give you a little add-on to it. In the same way that gym mentality, people are intimidated to go out and travel, and that's changing. Dating, a massive increase, 295% increase in dating. People are feeling more confident. They want to go out. They want another shot at love. And what happens when people start dating? They need therapy, right? So we all have therapy. So they're going to get more therapy. And it's about dating, helping it. We all need therapy when we're in a relationship. But it's not just about the relationship. It's about the GLP-1 journey, the experience, right? It is a major, major transformation they're going through. How do they cope with this changing life? How do they cope with the changing social circles they're going to be in? How are they going to cope with the fact that they're paying a lot of money and having to change how they manage their disposable income? What this is about is what I refer to as the high potential of being visible. You are looking at people who are going from being introverts to being extroverts, that for probably many years of their lives, they have struggled with weight, and it has impacted their personality, is it impacted their lifestyle, is defined who they are, and they've always aspired to be that person that represents who they want to be. And now they are that person, and doing it in a very rapid time frame. And this is really what it looks like. The woman on the left is showing the pants before, and now she can fit 2 legs of her new self in one of the legs of her jeans. And on the right here, this woman not only talked about the weight reduction in her migraines, reduction in inflammation. People on GLP-1 therapy talk about, now I can get my wedding band off. It was stuck on before. Nothing to read into that, just they can get things off. But how it's regulating her nervous system. It is not just the weight reduction. They are sleeping better. They are fundamentally feel better. Women's ovarian cycles have been reset by some people on a GLP-1 therapy. And we run a longitudinal study, a tracking study, comparing GLP-1 user attitudes and behaviors compared to general population. And what's interesting about this is I have never felt better about my future. I feel good about the world we live in. All right. Quick straw. Who feels great about the world we live in today? That many people. These people are optimists today. They feel very positive because their world has changed. And it's ultimately coming down to this idea about reframing the mind. That them as individuals, them as people, them as consumers, they have more endurance. They can do more. Hence, they want to go out and travel more. They want to date more. They're more active. They can focus better. They're sleeping better. They're feeling better. They don't feel tethered to food. So this feeling of convenience, they can live a different lifestyle, reprioritization, acceptance. As I mentioned, extroversion and maintenance. They feel like right now, the only concern around maintenance is my insurance company going to continue to cover a GLP-1? Can I get the next prescription filled? So what GLP-1s are ultimately delivering, their promise is this idea of control. Now, I'm going to give you a figure, a statistic, if you haven't heard enough already, that's going to probably like blow you away. People who deal with weight problems think about food on average 4 hours, 45 minutes a day, compared to people who don't suffer from weight problems on average 15 minutes a day. You think about the food noise that people are constantly distracted by. And if you ever saw the Seinfeld episode where George Costanza swore off sex, and all of a sudden that sex noise went away, and he learned Portuguese, he taught the New York Yankees how to be better batters. It's the same idea here. They're not thinking about food. And as a result, there's no more impulses, there's no more guilt. And part of that no more impulses is GLP-1s are demonstrating a reduction in risky behaviors. Alcohol consumption, drug use, gambling. So as we as marketers, right, we're all here, think about brands. We heard a lot of talk already about challenger brands. When temptation doesn't hit the same way, how do we resonate with these audiences? Not about portion size, not about gambling. How do you think differently about engaging these audiences? So your marketing playbook, my view is your marketing playbook doesn't need to change. It still has to be insight-driven. You still have to really understand your audiences, and that's what this is about. And these audiences are going to get even larger. They're going to get larger because the health benefits continue to grow. What you're looking on the right here is all the already validated health benefits: liver function, reduced inflammation, glycemic control, sleep, reduction in chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease is still the #1 killer of men. Now, we're going to build on that for a moment. Here are some already validated but in study areas. I'm going to call out two: cancer and dementia, Alzheimer's. They're right now being studied in GLP-1s. These are two of the hardest targets in healthcare today. We all know somebody who's passed away who suffered from cancer. We all know somebody, probably, or know somebody who suffered from dementia and Alzheimer's. If GLP-1s are validated in the use of these two conditions, approved, they will be, without question, one of the biggest scientific innovations in the history of science. And when we have to understand the audiences, it's understanding some of the codes and cues that they're related to. And what you're looking at is some of those codes and cues. First of all, shot day. Shockingly, people are actually celebrating the day they give themselves the injection. That's a huge deal. Because you ever worked in healthcare, people don't like giving themselves injection. The reason why? It's the day of greatest control. The food noise gets tamped down. They feel most confident. They feel more in control. Couples are going through the GLP-1 journey together. Right? They want to experience the whole thing. Non-scaled victories, the seatbelt issue, taking a picture of them on the flight. Or new influencers arise, a woman from France looking at how she's talking about her GLP-1 experience. Now, every market is going to be different in how they adopt GLP-1s on a whole number of levels. Europe won't be like the US. Asia won't be like Europe or the US. Everybody's going to personify it differently. But what we are seeing is a complete splintering of all different subcultures, all different groups. These are driven by ethnicity, they're driven by age, they're driven by what brand you're on. We have Mounjaro moms, Zepbound babies. We have old guys on Wegovy. We have I got pregnant on Ozempic. And these groups keep driving, and this is all happening in real time. So when brands have to think about, how do I actually dip my toe into the GLP-1 audience because I can't ignore it, either because I see it as a threat or as an opportunity, it's starting with just really good insight work, understanding this audience, and it's not a one-time event. This is one of the most dynamic health and wellness markets we've ever seen. And my last point, this is how different cultures we believe are going to start taking on GLP-1s. The US, it's a weight-obsessed culture. That's why driving for real-world rapid weight loss. In the UK, weight-related diseases, something totally different in Germany, the oldest population in Europe. GLP-1s represent healthy aging, right? So the promise will be tailored, will be received and tailored for that specific market, wherever it is. So it's going to be an exciting ride, one I'll watch, and hopefully this has answered some of the questions that you've had. Yeah?
Amazing.
All right.
Honestly, I have to say, this is so fascinating. We have got a couple of questions. Have I got time to ask them? Yes, I have. Firstly, a UK-specific question. How do you navigate the ban on advertising prescription-only medicines in the UK? What would you say the strategy should be?
So the question is, I want to make sure I heard you correctly.
How do you navigate? How do you get around? How you navigate? How do you cope with marketing based on the fact that there's a prescription-only ban?
Excellent question. Excellent question. So unlike the US, obviously in Europe, you can't advertise directly to consumers about a health product, right? There are other ways into this audience, like the codes and cues that I was referring to before. Those are excellent opportunities. Protein, smaller portion sizes, basically connecting to what people's ambition are and why they're typically being gravitated to GLP-1s. The idea is, I'm excluding all pharmaceutical products. So if you're a marketer representing Wegovy, this isn't for you. This is CPG, FMCG 100%. Brands. How you lean into that, understand where your audiences are and what are the triggers that they're looking for. These are ways that don't relate to health benefits, just tying into their own values and their own ambitions.
Absolutely. And the second question we have, which is slightly left field, but I'm interested to hear the answer. So you've explained how it decreases the urge to drink alcohol, to gamble, but does it impact on political views as well?
That's a big question. I'm very interested in studying that right now, depending on which way it goes. We don't know the answer to that.
Don't know yet. Well, keep
We'll
monitoring.
keep at it. We'll keep at it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Big round of applause, please. Bye-bye.
Thank you.